Okay. So our lecture today is our introduction to the respiratory system. And I would like to start with this question. Why do we need one? Yeah, those are all true. Let's go one bit at a time here, trying to figure out why we need one. Okay? Why do we need a respiratory system? So our cells can live? Yeah. If I was to sum it up like I did on the primer for 2 reasons, what were those reasons?
To live.
Yes, to get O2 from the air. And that's a component of the air. Not everything in the air we breathe is O2. In fact, most of it's not. Most of the air you breathe right now as you're sitting there is nitrogen gas. But about 20.9% of it's oxygen, and that's what we need. And we're going to bring it into our bodies to get it into our bloodstream. But we need one other thing we've got to do by breathing, and what's that? Yeah, we've got to get rid of CO2, carbon dioxide. That's the reasons we need one. The next question I have that I want to write down here, I want you to write down in your notes, is this. Where does the O2 go, and where does the CO2 come from? The answer to this question is the same. Yes, it is. Specifically, in a process called aerobic cell respiration. Okay, but let's pause for just a moment. Take a deep breath, everybody. Now, what you inhaled just then is now in your bloodstream. The oxygen from that is traveling through your bloodstream, attached to hemoglobin on red blood cells, and has by now reached its destination. In the cells where it's being absorbed, and it's heading in the cell to the powerhouse of the cell known as the mitochondria. And now it's going to work, and this is the work that it's going to do. It's called aerobic cellular Now, in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have done so much electrophysiology on my forearm because it's getting more difficult to write as the day goes on. My muscles are getting weak. All right, aerobic. This prefix simply means with O2. There are anaerobic options we have available, but they do not do very much. The beautiful thing about aerobic cellular respiration, it is exactly the opposite of photosynthesis. So whatever photosynthesis is doing, it's doing the opposite. So basically, plants do one thing, and we take what they make, and we take that process and turn it around to get what we need out of it. So for example, we take in this C6H12O6, which for our purposes here, we'll call it glucose. It doesn't have to be. That's the formula also for fructose and dextrose and I think galactose as well. There's a couple of other ones. But for our purposes, it's glucose. And we combine that with oxygen. And in the process, we produce CO2 and H2O. Now, this equation is not balanced. To balance this equation is a bit on the side of evil. 6, 6, 6. Now it's balanced. And you'll remember how to balance it from now on. Okay? So, folks, if you look at this equation, everybody's like, well, that's basically the equation for combustion. Yes, it is. We are like living fire. Basically, instead of fire making this reaction happen, it's a series of enzymes in our cells that makes it happen. Be like, what's the purpose? Why am I just taking oxygen and turning it into carbon dioxide? That's not the goal. Those are the byproducts. Here is the goal. What comes out of this is what? Why do we need to eat? Energy. You see, glucose is energy by itself, but it's not usable to us. We need to convert the currency. Just like my brother-in-law just got back from Europe, and so he had to convert his currency for all the cash that he had from euros back to US dollars. So because otherwise it's not usable in the States. And similarly, dollars are not particularly usable in Switzerland and in Italy and stuff like that. So this is energy, but it's not as usable as this one is. And so the energy that's usable to us is known as what? ATP. That's the energy currency. It's kind of like little rechargeable batteries that function, that carry on all the functions or carry out the energy necessary for the functions of all your enzymes and chemical reactions in the body. So, all right. So the goal of breathing is to exchange gases needed to get the usable energy from our food. That's really it. The goal of breathing is to exchange the gases needed to get the usable energy from our food into the bloodstream, out of the bloodstream. And the brilliance of this whole process, as long as you create enough surface area, it does it on its own. Things go where they need to go as long as you get them in and out in the way that you're supposed to. Oxygen leaves our lungs and goes into our blood. It's just diffusion. We've got more oxygen in our lungs than we do in our bloodstream. Therefore, it diffuses in. We have more carbon dioxide in our bloodstream than we do in our lungs, so it diffuses out and back out. It's just a wonderful, brilliant system. Okay. Our respiratory surfaces to exchange gases between the air and our blood are in the alveoli little sacs in our lungs. Our respiratory surfaces to exchange gases between the air and our blood are in the alveoli, little sacs in our lungs. You see, our lungs are not balloons. If they were balloons, then we'd be dead. There's just not enough surface area on the inside of our chest cavity that a balloon would do the job. Our lungs are basically like sponges. We have for the little sacs where air is actually exchanged, we have millions and millions of these tiny little sacs, increasing the surface area. I don't know if you remember this from the video we watched the other day, but it increases the square yardage inside of our lungs to what? Yeah, it's a little less than. We got 100 square yards, which is about half the size of this classroom on the floor, is how much surface area we have for gas exchange within our lungs. If they were balloons, we wouldn't have, but maybe about the size of your desktop there for gas exchange. Okay. Now, in order to make this work, we have to have a little something I haven't mentioned yet, but I feel like it's time. I feel like you're old enough. We can talk about this. It's called epithelium. Epithelium is required to maintain the respiratory surfaces. What is epithelium, Mr. Helly? I'm glad you asked me that. It's a specialized tissue that lines the body's surfaces. Okay. Why don't you name a body's surface? What's that? Yeah. Yeah, your arms are your skin in general. Pretty much anywhere we put those electrodes yesterday. Your skin is a body surface. What else? Oh, you don't know. Okay, sorry. Your respiratory passages. Well, Mr. Helly, they're inside my body. How is that a body surface? They come into direct contact with the outside world through the air that we breathe. There's really not much, there's no barrier between that and the outside world. Take another deep breath. You just inhaled some of your classmates. Okay? Yep. We have epithelium on the surface of our skin and it flakes off, goes into the air, goes airborne. When you inhaled just then, flakes of them ended up in your respiratory mucosa. That's how it works. Okay? Now, that's not ideal, but that's why we have that's why the epithelium is there to protect it. Also, and this is going to really mess with your heads, your digestive tract. Your digestive tract is a tube that goes from one end to the other. Starts with the mouth, ends with the anus, and it's just a tube in between. Esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum. It's just a tube. Your body is a giant donut. There is a hole that goes all the way through you from one end to the other. And the surfaces of that hole are the outside of your body, are the external environment of your body. That is a surface. So until food actually gets absorbed, technically it's somewhat on the outside of your body. Messing with your heads? Therefore, it is lined also with epithelium. Now, let's look at, there's 3 different types of epithelial cells. Okay? And here's what they are. I'm going to draw this first one from the side. There it is. Side view. Now from the top. Top view. This epithelial cell is known as a squamous. Known as a squamous. It's really wide and flat, flaky. It's what your skin's made out of, squamous epithelial cells. The next one, I will only need to draw from one view. It's going to look like I'm making this up, but I'm not. What shape is that? Cube. This one, no lie, is called cuboidal. It's a cuboidal cell. And then there's the last one. Kind of tall and skinny. Looking like a column, which is why it's called columnar epithelial cell. So those are the 3 types. Now, with that, we can make these have a couple different setups. They can be plain like this, or they can be multi-layered. So epithelium can be simple or stratified. If it's simple, that means it only has one layer. Whereas stratified means that what? It has multiple layers. And that is true with all of them except cuboidal. It doesn't play well with others. Okay. Simple or stratified? All right. Now, skin is made of stratified squamous, which is why it flakes off so easily. Now, our respiratory passages are going to be one of these two. Logically, folks, at the alveolus, where gas is exchanged, what do you think the perfect setup would be if form follows what again? Function. What would the perfect setup be if I want gases to pass through very easily? Squamous. Simple or stratified? Simple. Yeah. So simple squamous. In alveoli. Okay. For gas exchange, we want simple squamous. Now there is only one other type, and it's sort of unnecessary as far as like whether to say simple or stratified, because this one really is simple, but they feel the need to call it something else. Here's what it is. Pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Okay. Pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. And that's in the tubes going to the alveolus. Alveolus is singular, alveoli is plural, so if I use one or the other, that's what it means. We're almost done, gang. Here's what that looks like. Now, it looks like they're stratified. It's like, oh, this one's on top of this one. But if you look closer, they're simple, because this is still attached to that basement membrane, so is this one, and so is this one. There's none actually stacked on top of the others. They're just really smushed kind of close together. And as a result, they end up looking like they're stratified, but they're not. That's what pseudo-stratified means. Pseudo means false. If I say pseudo, what do you think of? Meth? Okay. Sudafed. Sudafed that they use to make meth is short for pseudoephedrine. It is like ephedrine, but it's like a false form. It's like a modified or alternate form of ephedrine. So that's why it's called Sudafed. This is called pseudostratified because it's falsely stratified. It's not actually stratified. It just looks that way. What does ciliated mean? Yeah, little hairs. And so let's go ahead and draw some of those on there. The lining of all the tubes that go from your nasal passages down your throat are all furry like shag carpet. Alright, let me show you some pictures and then we'll call it a day on notes here. Chapter 23 in the big white textbook. Here's a picture of what I'm talking about. Here's a pseudostratified columnar epithelium. They're ciliated. Oh, I forgot. Sorry. There's one other thing I want you to add. You can remember it. That'd be good.